All of the paranormal you'd ever want in one location. UFOs, werewolves, ghosts, and other strange phenomena. Join us today on Speaking of Spirits as we revisit that paranormal amusement park known as Skinwalker Ranch. Welcome today on Speaking of Spirits. As we revisit Skinwalker Ranch, as we get started today, I do have a little bit to admit here. I was listening to podcasts and realized I have done a horrible job of introducing us. So, for those of you who are listening, first of all, thank you. We're glad you joined us today. Joining me today, we got Colleen O'Hara, who will be with us, and Tim England, and myself is Mark Scott, and we are the podcast is Speaking of Spirits, which is powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Colleen is the leader of Pocatello Paranormal Research. She's been doing a great job for many years. She's got years of paranormal investigation. Tim is one of our audio guys. He's also the songwriter extraordinaire. We may come back to that later, but one of our head audio guys. And we usually use his studio to record the podcast. And my contribution here, I am a demonologist and occult specialist. So that's where I come in. Okay, now we got everybody up to speed. Let's get into talking about Skinwalker Ranch. So Skinwalker Ranch, there has been a series, TV series that is on the History Channel, I believe. And they have just completed their second season. We're going to come back here and talk about some of the things that they've gone over on that series and talk about some of the things going on at Skinwalker Ranch. For those of you unfamiliar, Skinwalker Ranch is actually, we get excited about it because it's something that's actually geographically close to us. It's in the state of Utah, not very far from where we are here in Idaho. Skinwalker Ranch is in the northeastern section of Utah, kind of directly under Wyoming. And it has had all kinds of paranormal activity for many, many years, going back quite a few decades. So we're going to be discussing all of the different activities going on there and maybe try to come up with some explanations for what's happening. So now that we've gone through, what are some of the big takeaways we've gotten so far about Skinwalker Ranch?
It's really weird.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
This particular podcast, we're just kind of going to overview the main takeaways overall the season. And I think one of the big things that they did is they were really scared to dig in the dirt. It was one of the no-nos that everybody had warned them about, and they decided to actually dig and just put cameras everywhere and watts of equipment and see what happens. And they did that, and weird things started to happen.
Right.
So after that, they decided that the dirt was weird. And one of the weirdest things that I think I've ever seen, and you could say that they may have fibbed it, and they could have. You never know. Ratings is ratings. But the ground was conductive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's real weird. Just real weird. I forget the distance, but I think it was like 30 feet away. They shot some electricity, and they picked it up 30 feet away.
That would make sense. That would explain a lot of things there.
Mm-hmm. So the smart fella couldn't explain it. And he called bunches of friends, and the friends couldn't really explain it either. So that was kind of cool. The first couple episodes there, that their takeaway was, by golly, this dirt is weird. Maybe we shouldn't dig in it.
Yeah.
And the other takeaway with the dirt is he took samples of it and sent it to his smart friends. And his smart friends sent back a whole list of the stuff that they found in the dirt. And he basically made it sound like everything that they found in the dirt, they use for electronic things, for spaceships and other things. And it wasn't usual substance that they had in the dirt. And he was fairly flabbergasted with that too. And so were all of his smart guy friends.
One of the things to remember, right, and I'm sure they brought this up, but this area was in the fallout zone from a lot of testing from like the atom bomb and all these different tests that they did in Nevada, right? So the wind pattern carried a lot of that fallout to these particular areas. These areas are east of those ranges. So
wouldn't that still be crapped up? Wouldn't that still be crapped up though with the land there with the radiation?
Well, I don't know what the.
No, that I just thought about something then that I saw watching this. I just hit my thing. So no, I just had a thought. I didn't see any. I just had a thought in my head that connected the tests in the nuclear site in Nevada. If the fallout happened there at Skinwalker Ranch and one of the events that occurred there at Skinwalker Ranch. And in my mind, I just made that connection. And when I made that connection, I pointed out the window. So everybody looked out the window. And I was like, no, I didn't see anything. I just thought something. But we had one of the incidents they had there at Skinwalker Ranch is at one time they actually opened a like an old, maybe even like an old sewer tank or whatever. And when they opened it, the person that was opening it was standing over when it opened actually got some radiation.
Right. Yeah.
But that radiation could have been from that fallout.
Well, it's hard to say because when they came back in, I think with the Geiger counter, they did get some hits and then it would go away.
But this was the thing, is that this was pretty much a sealed area.
Yeah. So when you're opening a vault, you're going to get
kind of open
an initial dose.
Whoever, who knows how long it had been sealed.
Yeah, and that was in the
and when
old,
he opened it, he was standing right over the top of it, so whatever came out hit him right in the face.
Yeah, I was just looking at her. Yeah, that's in the old home site too, and that area, that old, I think it's called Old Home Site too. That area has a lot of interesting phenomenons on it. In season 2, they used a LiDAR to. It basically gives you a 3D map of everything that it's scanning so that it can build 3D images, right? And I've actually been involved with LiDAR out in my field work. I have not done the LiDAR, but I've, been involved with the planning of doing LiDAR. And interesting that in really right behind that well that you're talking about, that vault, there's that old Homestead 2 house. And when they did the LiDAR, there's one room within that house that the LiDAR would not LiDAR. It would not make a 3D image of that room. It was just a black void. But everything outside that room was a 3D image. That was kind of interesting. So they showed them actually walking through with the LiDAR, and you could see it constructing the image. But playing it back, there was nothing there.
And in all of these things, they have real live experts. And when this stuff happens with their real live experts, they're like, never seen it before, don't know.
Right.
That's the takeaway from all of the experts.
Yeah, it's really kind of a fascinating place. When we were talking about the fallout with the radiation, I don't know what radioactive isotopes were involved with the fallout and what their half-lives were. Some of them half-lives are very, very quick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some half-lives are, thousands of years. Some half-lives are minutes.
Oh, wow.
So it's
Okay.
really hard. I don't know, because I've never really read anything on the fallout involved with the testing. So I don't know if that fallout would still be considered radioactive. I would assume not. There's town sites and stuff all around right now. So if there was something there, we would have probably figured that out by now. But in the groundwater, that's another thing, is groundwater can also pick up radiation naturally through the deposits that the groundwater is flowing through. For an example, there's this little town in Texas that where I used to work. Their town water had just low levels amount of radiation in it. I forget the exact isotope that was in it, because the groundwater formation was over a formation of granite that contained it. And like we're sitting at this granite countertop, a Geiger counter on this granite countertop would show radiation right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we'll all glow tonight. But yeah, so I mean, granite naturally contains some levels of radiation in it, and it will give it off for decades, thousands of years. I don't know what the half-life is of what this is. So, but it's interesting. I don't know. But for him to get radiation burns, that's a lot of radiation. Because when he opened that vault, he got a burn.
He did get a burn, but then again, like I said, that who knows how long that vault has been sealed and whatever built up inside there.
Right. But you wouldn't think, at least I wouldn't think, that you'd get an initial blast of radiation, then it would go away. Like the Geiger counter wouldn't even show it. Enough to get a burn and then it disappears. That's odd to me, because that's not how radiation works.
That is odd. Yeah,
I mean, you would continue to at least show something on a Geiger counter.
Well, again, depending on how long it was in there, there's a very small amount, but it has built up over how long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You
the
know,
whole
then you release
ranch.
it all at once.
It's so odd. There's just so many weird things. The one thing that didn't surprise me is they were trying to figure out water was going into a hole, and they were all stumped about that. And I'm like, that to me is not that's not a big deal. It finds a fault or a formation, and
That
it
happens
just
around here all the
yeah,
time.
and it just goes. I mean that.
Gone.
So I'm like, okay, guys, now that's not surprising to me, and that they were so mystified by how that it would never back up, basically, and pond. I'm thinking, well, no, I mean it's found a fracture in the bedrock or something, and it's just going. I mean, that's what water will do.
I was raised about 90 miles from here, and in an area called the Lost River Valley. And it's called that because the river goes into the desert and just disappears. It never comes out. So to me, that's perfectly normal.
Right. Right. Well, we have all that basalt out there too, right? So it creates a fracture system for water just to disappear.
Well, you could prove me wrong, but the old legend up Scout Mountain is Cherry Springs, where it spouts out. That no one really knows where that water comes from. It's just kind of there.
Just kind of shows up right there. Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah, see, you can argue it. That's just
It's a spring. It's a spring.
It's just the regional.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's snow melt from the top of Scout, and it's finding its way down and forms a spring. But okay, so that's the scientist in me, right?
That's way too logical.
I know. So when everybody's like, "You believe in the paranormal," I'm like, because there are things that you cannot explain. But that I think,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. Anyway.
As far as I'm concerned, no one knows where that water comes from.
Yeah. So, anywho. So the whole idea of Skinwalker Ranch, though, in the just decades and decades of phenomenon that has happened there, that can't scientifically be explained. The weird lasers. There's some Facebook groups that are dedicated to the Skinwalker Ranch. And there are people who live in the community right there. There's a community
Okay.
to the west. And some of these people show on their photos that they take of the, because they live there and they've taken photos all around the ranch. And when, are some of these weird laser lights that they see and they've filmed at the ranch. They'll be doing something completely, like for instance, looking at the conductivity of the soil, right? And then all of a sudden a laser will show up. And it's like, is it going from the ground up or from the sky down? Nobody can answer the question, but it just shows up randomly. And that's usually when something weird happens at the ranch. Well, some of these people in the housing communities around, they're to the west and a little bit north of Skinwalker Ranch in the town, they photographed some of these lasers, and they're always over the ranch or the mesa right there at the ranch. So that's really interesting that people are, it's not just for the TV show, unless they're filming for the TV show and using a laser and people are seeing it, but people say, yeah, we see these often enough to say, this is not normal. This is not normal. So, and people have taken there's a lot of photographic evidence of UFOs down there.
A lot of UFO activity down there over the ranch.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things happening down there.
They, two takeaways from the past couple minutes of conversation. They found hieroglyphs and they documented them in season 2. And they were, of course, able to piece together their stories to make it fit the agenda. But the hieroglyphs were there, and it seemed to at least be associated with the same things that are happening today, which is pretty something-ish. And they decided to shoot rockets, like big boy rockets, and see what happened. And
not like the rockets that my uncle shot off a couple of his fingers with. So let's just get this.
Well, that's another story.
That's a whole different story. Yeah.
They're big boys with big boy rockets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Incidences.
There we go.
Plural, that one. In the sky, and everybody saw it. And the cameraman would say, "Oh, right there," and you could see it on the TV.
Yeah.
And so, what's the explanation there?
Right. It's like whatever that they were doing was annoying the hell out of whatever's there watching this ranch. It almost has the feeling as if it's UFO, right? Some kind of alien type of intelligence down there that when they get close to a discovery, it interferes.
Yeah, it tries to stop them from doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Now there's a suggestion by more than one person who's come out to the ranch that there's a portal there, particularly in the old Home Site 2 area. I think that's right, Old Home Site 2. That it seems to be acting like a portal. And it's kind of funny because other than Ghost Adventures, I don't know of anybody who's actually witnessed a portal or seen a portal. Now, Zach gets them every week. I don't know how. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But
Demon.
Yeah.
Demon.
Yeah, and possession every week, but that's a whole different story. But I've never seen a portal. We may have had a house recently that could have had, maybe there was somebody suggested maybe there was a portal in it, but honestly, I've never experienced that, felt that. So I don't know. I guess there must be others who have. I mean, I've done this a very long time and I've never seen it. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I'm just saying I've never seen one. Now, Sedona, Arizona is a place where a lot of people think there may be a portal there. There's particular places, Stonehenge, and a few places around the world that act like portals. Is Skinwalker one that very well could be?
It could be, but I don't know. This is a podcast. You probably actually heard me roll my eyes when somebody says portal. It's been so overused and misused.
Yes.
It's so whenever I hear that, I'm gone. I'm out. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I mean, I understand they could exist in theory.
Yeah.
And maybe Skinwalker Ranch is a portal.
Yeah, I don't know, but what is a portal really? Does it open to different dimensions? I guess that could be. I mean, are we talking dimensions? Are we talking just alien intelligence? What are we talking about? That's
I'm in that category. I've always thought that there are dimensions here, in different dimensions. And I can't remember if it was the first season or the second season. They had a Jewish feller come,
yeah.
and he did an old
Season one, Jewish Rite or
Jewish
something he
rite,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing what they picked up in the thermal. I I was fairly flabbergasted. I've played with a bunch of thermals in my life. In one of my many former lives, I was a firefighter. And,
So you've seen some thermal things.
yeah. And when I was there, they got a brand new $15,000 thermal camera. And we did it so we could find hotspots.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if there's a fire in your house, a lot of times we think it's contained because we can't see it or smell it or feel it. But with the thermal camera, you can just go on the wall, and it's amazing the hotspots that are left.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really been a huge advancement in firefighter technology because they have that. And that's why there's not like as many second calls as there used to be because they have that. I digress. I got to play with this really expensive thermal camera. They are really hard to trick. Like, I couldn't figure out how to. And so when they had that thermal camera and then they had the Jewish feller do whatever it was, a certain prayer, and all of the thermal energy went opposite of what the thermal energy was supposed to do, blew my mind. Blew my mind. Because, one, it's hard to mess with physics, and the heat was going the wrong way. And two, it's really hard to mess with those thermal cameras. And the thermal camera was telling you exactly the temperatures.
Yeah.
And so seeing that develop really affected me.
Well, we have a not $15,000 thermal camera for our team because we're on a shoestring budget. But honestly, because even it was I think $250 for our camera, and even that one, I don't know how you could trick it. It'll show like if somebody's sitting on a couch and then they get up. It'll show the heat signature and that cushion just slowly go away. I don't know how you could trick it other than, I mean, if you were to use a heater or something like that, or some kind of indoor air conditioner or something to chill down a room. But when we were at the Enders Hotel, we had 3 human-formed apparitions coming at us, and they were blue. You could see us walk in front of it, the blue signatures. So you can tell what was alive and what wasn't. And even though it was the same shape, of course, the blue signatures were almost ceiling height. You could see the investigators walking towards us, the camera, and then you could see the thermal image. So Skinwalker, again, yeah, like you said, everything worked polar opposite is the way it should. It's just bananas what goes on down there. We've said it before. We plan on going down there in the spring. We probably can't get on the ranch. Guaranteed can't get on the ranch. But we
can wait.
Yeah, we can wait. Woo! But honestly, enough people in these Facebook groups from around that area are seeing enough anomalous behavior of things out there that I'm pretty sure we'll be able to come up with some kind of evidence of our own and show.
Pretty sure. One of the interesting things to me now, again, the great thing about Skinwalker Ranch is so many different things. So we've got things up in the sky, objects in the sky that we can't identify. We've got strange dirt,
Weird energy,
and strange predators. So I haven't seen season 2 yet, but did they say anything about the predators?
Well, they had a really weird experience. I think it was the day that they were shooting the rockets off. They were just hanging out at the table thing, and they have security camera footage that showed their responses, and they said that they saw a spherical looking thing like looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you saw them sitting at the table, and then you saw them all react, and they took their guns out and went looking for spherical thing, and it took off.
Yeah, and that was weird. And then animal behavior was during some of these experiments, the animal behavior is weird, like the cattle. And then they brought in, which I really didn't like. They brought in the llamas, and the llamas were the alpacas or llamas? Yeah, they were attacked. I didn't like that because they kind of set them up for. They're so docile, alpacas, and then to put them in a position of being attacked, that kind of sucked. But I guess it's no different with the cattle, really. But I don't think of cattle as docile. I have to use an air horn to go out and change my irrigation sometimes to keep the calves off me because they're charging me. But they've had the cattle group in different ways. When they're doing these experiments, I can see something like a rocket scaring the cattle, because they're obviously going to see that. But some of the other experiments that had nothing to do with the cattle or anything overhead that the cattle could freak from, the cattle would seem to react to it. Are they reacting to the experiment or to something reacting to the experiment?
Yeah, that's the question. What are the animals responding to?
Well, and that's a huge question in its own right. So I live in the middle of nowhere, and there's deer all over, all over. So many deer. And just last week, I was walking through my kitchen, and I saw my dogs looking above the shop. And I looked above the shop, and I'm like, what are you idiots looking at? And then I looked outside, and there was a pack of deer, and they were looking at the exact same spot right over the shop. And so my dogs were looking, the deer were looking.
And now you're looking.
I'm looking, I don't see anything.
Okay.
So
cougar are pretty stealthy.
They are. But so there was a fire up near my house years ago, and there used to be bunches of junipers, and so you couldn't even see the mountain. Now all the junipers are gone. And so right exactly where they were looking was just a grassy spot. And you could see it. And I stood there and I looked at it with them for minutes. And there was nothing. And so it makes you wonder what animals can and can't pick up.
Yeah. They didn't have any other incidents like, there was the story of the dog that attacked the cattle down at Skinwalker Ranch back when was it the Shermans?
Yeah,
owned
some
it?
previous years. And there was a large canine creature, dog,
Yeah, that kind of
wolf thing. Yeah.
right sounded like more like a shapeshifter than anything else.
It kind of did, yeah.
And,
but it was very, very aggressive and very hard to get off of the animals.
Right.
Once it had started attacking.
Yeah, I mean, like point blank, they were shooting.
Yeah, they were actually shooting this thing like 4 times.
And it wasn't phased.
Yes.
So that's odd.
And they were shooting it with a sizable gun too. I mean, this was.
It wasn't a pea shooter.
Something solid.
Yeah. And to be as close as they allegedly were, it would have killed any other dog. But it just kept taking the rounds.
Or at least, even if you would have missed it, at least the sound of the gun going off would have spooked it.
Regular animals really like life preservation.
They do, yes.
Yeah. So just one more pocket of anomaly that from this ranch. You have the weird shapeshifter things. You have the UFOs. The weird thermal behaviors, the weird LIDAR behavior, the weird soil conductivity, the weird lasers that go on and off. Just weirdness. I mean, everything there, nothing seems normal. the fact that it's an actual still that they have cattle down there, and I'm assuming that at least a couple of the people are living there, right? That it's mind blowing to me that people would say, "Yeah, I'll live there. I don't care." I mean, I probably would because it fascinates me. So I don't, but I think there's probably only a handful of people in the world that would say, "I'll do it," and not get freaked out.
Well, there's a couple that's living there that what kind of implies that they're running the ranch.
Right.
So it's still an operational ranch.
Right.
You know, and they're just trying to operate around all of this mondo weirdness going on.
Yeah, it's strange. What I find kind of fascinating is the fact that they did have the one cow died, but I still question that whole scene from season 1 to season 2. The fact that the cow's coat color changed. I went bullshit on that one. Sorry, audience, but leopard don't change its spots. You don't go from a black Angus to a Hereford cow, in death. It just doesn't happen. So that one I called BS on. But they haven't had any other cattle mutilations down there other than when the Sherms didn't they have cattle mutilations there? And then the owners prior to them.
Yeah. There is a history of cattle mutilations, but the current owner has not
had any
recorded any on that location.
Now that's weird to me, that it just like stopped, unless, I don't know, was whatever doing these mutilations finally gathered enough information that they didn't need anymore. I don't know. But mutilations throughout the world kind of stopped.
True.
So
that is true. There's not nearly as many reports, at least.
Yeah. So back in the 70s, there was like a plethora of cattle mutilations that happened all over the world. It wasn't just the Skinwalker Ranch. They were all over. There was reports because I read the Enquirer back then, and it was in there all the time. And so I'm just saying, cattle mutilations seem to happen a lot, and then you don't hear of it anymore anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Bat Boy finally died.
Maybe. Maybe. So I don't know. So maybe does this mean that this intelligence finally it does like fact-finding missions for a while, and then it says, okay, we know enough about reproductive organs that we can move on to something else. I don't know.
Well, it depends on the intelligences we're dealing with.
Yeah.
At a certain point, maybe they're kind of watching us too. And let's take the cattle mutilations, for example. If that gets to a certain point where it becomes popular, and then we start really watching it and focusing it and trying to figure it out, do they stop doing it?
Yeah, maybe.
Because they don't want...
The rats are catching on.
Yeah, they don't want us to figure out what's going on. So, I mean, it kind of depends on, what kind of intelligence are we dealing with. I could put crop circles in that field too. I haven't heard of crop circles for a while.
Right. But I thought all crop circles were made by drunken teenagers with ropes and boards. So just saying. I think once we caught on to the fact that they had a rope to make all these perfect circles and boards, that they finally stopped doing them. But actually, I think there was a crop circle just recently in England again.
Okay.
So one of the weird pages I follow on Facebook.
Just something, I'm just throwing out there as an example. There's tends to be periods where you hear about certain activity, and then that activity kind of falls off.
Yeah.
It kind of goes away. So.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that they did there was playing with Tesla coils.
I was going to say, when you were speaking earlier about trying to explain what's going on, it's, we need Tesla. Teslas would have this figured out.
And the Tesla coil episode is fun. I love Tesla coils and the things. And in that episode, the energy that they were putting out was just amazing. It was the biggest Tesla coil that I'd ever seen, and man, the things I could do with that.
We need one of those.
Mm-hmm. We really, really do. So that episode wasn't necessarily mind blowing. It was just cool. But what happened the episode after, and it was the next day in like real life, was they decided to do a helicopter
That's right.
sweep path,
Mhm.
and something was following it
Yes.
the whole time, and the helicopter was freaking out. And it was interesting because to me, because it seemed like they were progressively stepping it up, and as they were progressively stepping it up, the whatever was right behind them.
Hmm.
And it was an interesting season.
Yeah.
I really really enjoyed it, and that's just because I like using my imagination. And so being able to try to put myself in the place of those people and actually seeing the fear in their eyes in the helicopter, like the pilot.
Mhm.
To be a pilot, you really need a calmer demeanor and be able to keep a level head. And you could see that pilot was doing his best to do
stay
that calm
there.
maneuver and to be calm, but you could also see that he didn't know what was happening and he wasn't comfortable with the situation. And it's definitely hard to act that.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. So many things going on out there at Skinwalker Ranch. We've got the objects in the sky that we can't identify. We've got strange dirt, weird predators, all kinds of things. But thank you for joining us today on Speaking of Spirits. And we hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you are, please go to whatever you're using to get your podcast. Give us a 5-star review. That lets us know what we're doing and it helps others find the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Ha 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 ha!